I'm Lisa Lucas, travel and tech writer, former WCRF staffer, and today I'm going to talk about how fast the world is changing. So fast that it feels like we're in uncharted territory, and how adventurers might approach this changing world. And so we're going to talk about the evidence-based, because I know you guys are all about the evidence-based science, and mindset techniques used by Olympians, pro athletes, and mountaineers to help them manage change as they're going through it, and sometimes do what has never been done before. So today, we're going to give you the adventure mindset. This is me. I was an athlete, and in my teenage years, I had a terrible, life-changing accident, and that left me in a wheelchair for a while. And so my whole life felt like it was up in the air. And then I started cycling. And at age 22, I cycled from the East Coast to the West Coast of America and down the West Coast to LA, unsupported. And then I recently wrote about that as a journalist for National Geographic. And so these kinds of trips are the kind of trips where things go wrong, and you can't prepare for everything, and even if you do, you have to troubleshoot. And so I'm going to talk about managing change through that lens. Okay, so the world is changing. I mean, do you think it's changing faster than it ever has before? It does feel like it, right? Okay, your bank accounts are changing, your rent's changing, your mortgage is changing. AI is changing your life and work. Yeah, and it almost feels like my brain is supposed to operate like this, but it doesn't. Okay, so this is your beautiful WCRF website that's carefully crafted. You pour over, like every brand, the analytics, the referrals. You think about the SEO, you think about the imagery. And it's like a work of art, right? You spend a lot of time, and your bottom line, both reaching your donors, but also the people that you want to give this information to, you know, it comes down, or it has, to how great your website has been. And now this is what an AI agent sees when it looks at your website. It's shocking, isn't it? All of that, where all of the SEO that you've put into your site to rank on Google. Yeah, it's shocking for everyone, and it's changed dramatically in the last 6 months. Okay, so I chaired a panel at the AI Summit a couple weeks ago, and these were two numbers that really struck me about the changing world. So 44%. 44% of people now search with their AI agent as their primary search. Does anyone want to guess what 93 is? 93%? 93% is the number of zero-click searches there are. And so it's, once you're in your AI agent environment, the number of searches that you never click out of. Right? So you don't leave and go to somebody's beautiful website. And that is a shocking number. And so people are very comfortable searching within AI, and that is dramatically changing everything about the way we live and work, and how we've built businesses and, you know, nonprofits and charity organizations over the past 20 years. And so what would an adventurer do about this almost like crisis moment where we're all trying to figure out what to do about our websites, how, you know, are my kids even going to have jobs? You know, all of these things that are real, legitimate fears, because we are in this uncharted territory. And so this is Sir Ranulph Fiennes, famous for crossing around the surface of the globe to go to the North Pole and South Pole. He also was the first person to cross Antarctica. So you can just imagine being there. Nobody had been there before. You can imagine, he prepared what it's going to be like. But literally no one had been there. And if something went wrong, it was all down to him. So Ran has a burn your boats mentality. He says, okay, you show up with your fleet of boats at the coastline, and in order to move forward, you just burn all your boats to the ground, and so you have no alternative. And that's how he gets around the fear. He says, okay, if you take all other choices away, then you have to move forward. Oh. This is Dervla Murphy. She's an Irish adventurer and author. She biked from Ireland to India in the 1960s and wrote about it in her amazing memoir, Full Tilt. And she was attacked by a pack of wolves in Bulgaria. She writes about this. And she turned around and shot them. Like while they're attacking her, you can imagine, to escape. She said, I don't consider myself brave because I'm never afraid. I just come and do what I need to do. Right, so two different adventurers with two very different approaches to bravery and doing what they need to do, but both requiring these mental gymnastics around dealing with the reality of their situation. Okay, and so we're going to do something closer to home. We're going to talk about getting naked. Don't worry, it's not a group exercise. Okay, so last year I was living in Japan and I wrote about Japanese mountain onsens for the New York Times, and they're amazing and beautiful. But one of the important non-negotiable rules is you have to be naked, absolutely naked. So you thought we were going to talk about Everest, but I mean, when you have to be totally naked in front of other strangers while sober, that's really confronting. Like all of your self-conscious thoughts come out. The bulge, the extra bulges, the extra pounds. I mean, I've had 2 babies and I have stretch marks, and my boobs were basically restaurants for 2 years. And so, this is what I'm dealing with here. And so, I'm just trying to hide behind some steam. And then you realize, actually, no one cares. Everyone's there to be relaxed. And so this is what happens. In our brains, we have to move through this discomfort and really do that mental flip in order to deal with this discomfort. And we do it in lots of different ways. But if you can move through the discomfort and be vulnerable, then there is this new possibility. And so you go from kind of hiding, behind the steam, thinking about Japanese skincare and why I don't have it. And then you can go to, whatever, I own this, it's fine. And that's what the Japanese women are doing, and they're loving it. Okay, and so we all know this, that the neuroscience says that our brains are biologically designed to keep us safe, right? So safety is what our brains are there to do. And we have all these stories that come up. Oh, I don't know, I think they're thinking about me. Or, oh, my manager, you know, they don't believe I can do this project, and maybe I can't, and maybe I'm not ready. And so there are all these stories in your brain, and actually you have to just decide that you can't always trust your brain. And the biology is there to keep you in one place. And when change is coming, you can't just stay in the same place, or you'll be stagnant. And you have to move. And there's perspective. And so you'll remember this dress from a while ago. And so this dress was making the rounds. And you had to decide, is it white? Is it blue? You know, it's the same dress in different situations, surrounded by different things, different people, and different people would see different colors. And so your brain is playing all kinds of tricks, and you have perspective, and you have biology. And so essentially, it's really, really easy to just decide, you know, I'm not gonna change. But that's not an option in our world right now. Okay, and so who has resisted something that you knew was good for you? You know, not starting a project when you thought you should, not breaking up with someone when you knew they weren't good for you. Yeah, I mean, of course. We all are like, just let me put my head in the sand for one more year. You know, we resist lots of things, even though we know that we need change. And so it's normal. It's biology. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to put you into the adventure mindset, and to really get you there and make it real, we want you to think about one of your fears. And so we're at work, and so it could be a fear around work. I'm not going to have you write it down or pass it to anyone, but it could also be about the world, the changing landscape of tech or politics or anything, like your real fears. And it's going to be useful because we're going to go through and think about that. Okay, so you have it, and really like visualize it, like get really close to how scary it is. Okay, so now we're going to talk about these pillars that make up the science that these Olympians and pro athletes and mountaineers are really using. And they use all kinds of things, but these are the kind of the trusted and proven pieces. And so you've probably heard of lots of them. And so CBT, reframing negative thoughts. And so if you do have this manager and you think, oh God, they think that I'm going to do awful on this project, you know, the reframe is, okay, I know that they want me to do well and succeed, and actually they want to remove the barriers. And so that is what has to happen. So CBT is just reframing negative thoughts, right? And then acceptance and commitment therapy. So what that is when you almost like name what your fear and anxiety is. And so people might use this if they have social anxiety, and so they don't want to go to the party because they're going to have to make the small talk and like be real with other people. And so sometimes what people do is they name their social anxiety, like Sheila. Like, oh, every time I'm in this situation, Sheila pops up. And it kind of takes the fear out of the situation. It takes the power away from it when you name it and you know, oh, this is always going to come up. Of course it's coming up right now, and I'm going to do it anyway, right? And that's what lots of these people are doing. And then this acronym here is really visualization, and this is extremely powerful because when you're really, really like imagining something happening, like you feel, you know, maybe the sweats, what you're actually wearing, how they react to you, and just completely role play the whole situation. This supposedly fires up the same neural pathways in the brain as though you were actually doing the thing. And so it's like practicing something, right? Or actually running through. And so actually it links these neural pathways in the brain. And this is a very powerful concept. So it's sort of, you have to get over the negative thoughts and then move on to forward thinking. And so these are just some of the pillars, because we're going to go on to talk about how some of these peak performers use these. So this is Simone Biles, and she's the most decorated gymnast in the world, in history. And she talks powerfully about using visualization. But she first had to get over, with like CBT, her fear. Any gymnast, the first time they do a cartwheel, I mean, the idea that you're going to throw yourself down and not break your arm, you have to deal with that. Of course, wouldn't I break? A lot of times people do it as a child, and so they learn this before they really are attuned to their fears. But if you had to do a cartwheel as an adult, you would just think you're going to break your arm. Right? And so you have to reframe it. And so of course, she had to get over like any negativity that would crop up. And she was using, and so to do the acceptance also is there. And so there's doing a cartwheel. But if you see at the beginning of this routine, she's doing a back handspring. If you've ever done a back handspring, which I just about got one out when I was a kid. And my daughter's a gymnast, and so she's learning to do these things. You do a back walkover, so you do a back bend, and then you kick your legs over, and then you have to go through this transformation from being able to do that and put your hands down to, okay, I'm going to stand here, and I'm going to trust that my hands are going to hit the mat, and I'm going to flip over. And so that's not just like looking there and then if you fall. You really have to accept, okay, I'm terribly scared of this, and I'm going to do it anyway. And then she talks about this visualization. I'll go through every skill in my head, exactly what I'm going to do, so that I can perform it to the best of my abilities. And so this has been a really important part of keeping her calm before her performances, but really she attributes this to her comebacks. But everyone, the New York Knicks that just won, everyone is using these sports psychologists that are helping them reframe and visualize. Our friend Bear Grylls, everything we create starts in the mind. Your imagination isn't just fantasy. It's the blueprint for your future. And so Bear really wanted to climb Mount Everest when he was a kid. He had this in his mind. He was very excited about it. And when he was around 20, he had a near fatal parachute accident where he broke his back and was in bed doing rehab. It was a long drawn out injury. And he said that he used visualization, like really imagining being up on the top of Mount Everest in order to get through this enormous rehab that he had to do. And that he would smell the air and feel his jacket. And apparently from Mount Everest, I've never been there, but you can see the curvature of the earth. And so really like being completely there. And then Aron Ralston, does anyone know him? Yes, okay. And so for anyone that doesn't, in 2003, he was hiking out in Blue John Canyon, all alone, without a phone, and a boulder came down and pinned him. And he was there for days, thinking, how can I get out? And he tried to break it down into little pieces. And he said, by the time it was day 5, this is a real picture of him. He had a camera, so he didn't have a phone, but he had a camera, and he thought, okay, I'm going to die here, and I'm going to take this picture, for my parents. They're going to find this. And on day 5, he had this vision of his unborn child. And he just focused completely on that. And then, like, you could just see this child, and he was completely there, and he used that visualization in order to cut off his own arm and escape. And then there's failing. So you can talk about all the science, but then everyone knows failing is baked into success, right? I mean, in a work environment, we try to just like pretend like the failing doesn't happen and everyone projects success and we're doing so great. But the reality is that failing is part of success. And we really have to do that. And sometimes you feel like you're failing all alone and you kind of keep it to yourself and you feel embarrassed because it seems like everyone else is being successful. And it's just part of the package. So just like the other 3 pillars, like every one of these athletes or mountaineers understands, okay, this is just part of it. And so how do adventurers like really approach it, failure? Well, they, coming back to our friend Ran, he decided that he wanted to be the oldest Brit to climb Mount Everest. And he tried, he failed twice. And this is a man who was like a, known adventurer, very successful, everyone was giving this man money to go all around the world, and he failed twice before he climbed Mount Everest. I mean, he had a heart attack on the first one. And he came down, and he waited, and he just climbed up the next year. And so adventurers, athletes, they see the success that's baked in as, or the failure that's baked in as just the unfinished story. So I haven't, I've failed, but it's just not over yet. Yeah, and so what we're going to do is kind of take that, take all those pillars, and we wanted to turn it into kind of these mindset flips that you could actually do. Because I've seen lots of mountaineers come and talk about, and I was climbing and I had so much grit and resilience, and it's really easy to say that, and it's very disconnected from the normal experience. And so instead of like talking about climbing Everest, the idea is how could you just have kind of 5 flips that are evidence-based that you have in your back pocket. And so as you're navigating change and this biggest fear that we've talked about, that you can pull out. And so this is the adventure mindset and the 5 flips. Because it's not the circumstance, it's not the thing we're doing, it's all in the mind. Okay, so the first flip is moving from wallowing to confidence. And so this would be CBT. So this is when you're trying to reframe something that, something bad that's happened, or walling, oh my God, AI, it's going to come and take my job, it's going to take all my friends, I'm just going to be sitting in this room alone. Okay, so you can wallow for a while, and then have all the feelings, and then what you need to do is somehow get out of it. But how do you do that? Okay, and so what I want you to do in your mind is just really think in a very clear way about three successes that you've had, and just really be there and feel the air, like Bear was when he was in his rehab chair thinking about climbing Everest. And so how do I really connect myself to those successes and like really pull them out? And the thing is that you have to I mean, you can feel like this situation is completely different than anyone you've been through before. But, maybe you graduated from university, maybe you got this great job. The thing is, it's easy to forget all of these successes that that we've had. And then going from the blank paper to the future self. And so this is really using that visualization. And so thinking about, okay, so in 1 year from right now, where do I want to be? Like, what does my job look like here? What projects do I want to be working on? What do I look like? What am I going to be wearing? And so the idea, if you have a piece of paper, and it's easy to say this, but I would say if you have a piece of paper, just start writing a bit and just really connect to this thing that you want in 1 year. What does your job look like? Or what does your relationship look like? And really get connected to that future self that you want, using those visualization techniques that Simone Biles was using. And then you have to make it actionable. And so break it down into 3 actions that you can do in the next week. And so if you're going to go climb Everest, or when I was biking across America and really planning it, I had to think, okay, so who's done this before? How could I go and talk to them about how what were their experiences? What kind of gear do I need? Oh, okay, I need this kind of sleeping mat. It has to be really small. And I'm going to need some sort of maps, and like all of the stuff are the accoutrements that make it the reality. And then you have to start just making it actionable, because you can say, oh yeah, no, I'd really love to write that book someday. And then, okay, so what are you doing in the next week? Is it blocked into your calendar? Or I'd really, really love to get a promotion. So what does that mean? Like, well, how am I going to put that in my diary for next week? And just breaking it into these little pieces of actions that, and that is exactly what Rand's doing. That's exactly what Simone is doing. And so you just have to say, okay, I see this future doing these, Arctic exploring missions themselves. Right? And so get your team, get your peers, get the people, and start sharing this future blueprint of yourself. And so other people start seeing you as that person. And so don't do it on your own. Okay, what else are they doing? Okay, going from perfection to iteration. I mean, if you have a big dream, like sailing across the Atlantic, the reality is that you have to start making those plans and putting it out into the world before you're really ready. If you're going to write a book, you have to start putting out drafts and sharing them. You have to share work in progress. You have to find a mechanism, people that you trust, that you can share this with and get it out there. And so LinkedIn co-founder, Reed said, look, if you aren't embarrassed by your first version, then you've launched too late. And so you really have to think, how can I just take this? It's good enough. Send it out in the world. Maybe it's to appear if it has to be something that's perfect by the time it goes on. But find a mechanism for not holding on to things, because the problem is, sometimes, you can be like, oh, I have this dream, I'm going to be the first person to do this, and then you hold on to it for years and years, editing and making it better, and then someone else has already done it, right? And so you have to find a way. And so I would hold on to the number 70. And so you think, when something is 70%, I have to find a way to put it out into the world. I have to find a way to move this forward. You're never going to be ready. You're never going to be ready. And the final flip is moving from being happy in your comfort to being satisfied with discomfort. And this is really, Ran, loving just like climbing the mountain. And you can't just stay cozy on your couch. You have to think, what am I doing that is uncomfortable. And so a helpful flip is just thinking, okay, so related to this biggest fear, what am I avoiding doing because I'm scared? And that could be upskilling, and that could be figuring out the first step to buying a property. It could be, there are all these things, but really think, just do this audit and think, okay, so what is it that I'm not doing, that I'm avoiding because I'm scared? Yeah, so going from wallowing to confidence, blank paper to future self, isolation to connection, perfectionism to iteration, comfort to discomfort. And I mean, it may sound silly and woo-woo, but actually it's all evidence-based, and people are paid, the big bucks to, help these athletes and mountaineers use these techniques. So you should be using these techniques too, and think, okay, when things are changing, when the rug's pulled out from underneath me, how can I just approach it like an adventure, like Ran would? So, when the world is changing, lean into your discomfort. Be okay being naked and vulnerable in front of others, and just imagine what you could be in the future, and be really comfortable with that future self. Thank you.